Welcome to Conversation with Buddy. I'm your host, Buddy Puckett, brought to you by Valor Mentoring, where we disciple and mentor men to be followers of Jesus, to love people, and to make a difference in the world. And today we have a special guest. He's the epitome, really, of that calling that God has put on his life. I'm excited to introduce him. He's actually been on here before, so he's not a stranger. But before I do, I just want to say thank you to all of our loyal listeners who listen each week. The goal of this podcast has always been to encourage, inspire, and challenge you to live a Christ-centered life that would be honoring to God. So hopefully that's the goal. And hopefully each podcast that you hear, you're actually hearing the stories that will help you do that as well. If I could ask just a favor, if you have heard a story on here that's really changed you, challenged you, inspired you, would you please subscribe to our podcast, which just help us to grow the show. You know, my goal when we first started was if we could change just one life, it would make a difference. God has, I think, been a part of this. In fact, I know he has. We have over 10,000 downloads. I hear stories every single week that really have encouraged people. So let's just keep growing the show. Until God says not to, we're going to keep doing it. What I want to do today is introduce our guest today based upon the verse of the day, which came out of 2 Timothy 1:7. Now, you know Paul from the New Testament. He was probably the majority of the writer of the books in the New Testament. He was mentoring a young man named Timothy, and the verse that he used that I picked up today was 2 Timothy 1:7. It says, "For God did not give us the power of timidity, but of power, love, and self-discipline." So that verse means a lot. And today, as we introduce our guest, Tim Davis, welcome, Tim.
Hey.
Glad you're here. You are, to me, the epitome of what it means to be a mentor and a discipler.
Oh, man. Well, I mean, that's pretty humbling because I, of course, would say the same about you and many other people, for sure.
Yeah. Well, today we're going to talk about Valor Mentoring.
Okay.
So a lot of you who maybe haven't heard Tim's previous podcast is episode 1. I would encourage you to go back and listen to it. For those that know Tim, and a lot of you around this Salem-Keizer area do know Tim, you already know who Tim is and what he's about, but we're going to kind of dive in a little bit deeper and figure out what Tim's about, where he's going, and why that's important to him. So let's just start out, Tim. Let's pick up where we left off last time.
Yeah.
You had been a part of Valor Mentoring.
Yep.
Walk us through just a short clip on when it began and the first purchase of the wreck, and then, because that's where we were,
right,
and then where we are,
right,
and then where we're going.
Yeah. So, well, of course, it started because you were there. You, me, and Sven Anderson have been getting together for, 20 years, mostly on a weekly basis, and felt like God blamed us one morning to duplicate ourselves, and so we just began to ask a guy to meet with another guy and do some of the things that you, me, and Sven were doing with other guys in the community, whether they needed help in their marriage, their finances, their business, or whatever. And so that's what we did. We started to do that, and the need was really high. We learned early that we were onto something, and so we needed to create an organization. And so from then, we've started from scratch way back then to all the way to an organization that has over 300 volunteers, 30 employees. We have $4 million worth of real estate. We'll do just short of 100,000 hours of mentoring this year, just in Oregon. So, yeah.
Well, it was interesting. So I had you on my first podcast, and although I've known you for like over 20 years or so,
yep,
I still learned a lot. You know, you came from a fatherless home.
Absolutely.
Is that what drives you today? Is that part of why you're driven? What is it about you that, are you just really just a type A guy? I don't know.
Well, I'm certainly, I guess, more of a type A and a guy who earlier in my life was competitive, right? But really it's about what God did for me, right? So my mom remarried 3 times. She was a wonderful, nurturing mom to me with a really bad picker, And so I moved 21 times during my school years, 3 divorces as a kid. My mom gets sick with cancer, and 3 months after high school, she passes away, and I'm on my own at 19. And so I don't mean that as a woe is me. I didn't know Jesus yet. I had the respect for this a God guy, and I didn't use certain cuss words, but the short snippet is that I got pushed off college and started working and making money and buying Corvettes and drinking tequila and chasing girls. And then in my mid-20s, I met this Jewish carpenter, Jesus, and he changed my life forever. And so I always knew I wanted to be a husband and a father someday. Even as a child, I could see that, but I knew that I didn't have the tools to be a husband or a father. And so just asked God to send people into my life that I could learn from about that. And so Valor is really just an expression of what was already done in my life, and I'm far from perfect, but I've certainly learned an incredible amount, and I've been in the community like you for more than 30 years.
Yeah. Okay, so as you go back and you think of that, some of those first people that mentored you, that led you to Christ, who were they, if you want to talk about them?
Yeah.
And then where has that led you today to be that same mentor in someone else's life? I think that's a big one, big calling.
So I don't know, like you, I had some athletic ability or whatever, and after high school and a little bit of college, played slow pitch softball, and there's a couple of churches in town that invited me to play, and of course I realize now that they were, that was just a discipleship field, right? I could come in and hit 600 or 700 with a bunch of home runs. I helped them, but they were helping me. And so, Gary Taylor and some of those others were instrumental, and then you and Sven at helping in my maturity, and so on. Endless amounts of people that invested. So,
and the whole idea of being mentored to mentee, it doesn't change. We don't become one and then become another. We're both.
Yeah.
Would you agree that we're actually both mentor and mentee? Because
every one of your listeners should be being mentored and mentoring someone. I don't care if you're a middle schooler or a high school or a college or a retired person. There's people that you can exchange some of your opportunities and hearing and wisdom to. So whether you're a high schooler investing in a middle schooler or whatever, it's really important. I tell people this all the time. Listen, I got the best marriage I know on the face of the earth. I got the finest wife. I've got 2 amazing young adult kids that serve the community, and I love them. I don't necessarily agree with every decision they make, but they're amazing, and they still choose to talk to us every day and go on vacations with us. And I got an 800 credit score, and I still have 4 mentors in my life, at least, And so you never arrive. I know God made me a learner too, so I'm appreciative of that. And he gave me an ability. I recognize that I'm a glass half full guy and a risk taker. I'm not a guy who plays a victim card. I've overcome a lot in my life, and so
that's pretty awesome. I mean, we all have a story, and you have a story, and what you just told me was, I'm not a victim.
Right.
And how many of us have? I mean, I've played the victim before. I'm sure we all have at some point in time.
Sure, yeah.
But it's choosing not to live in victimhood.
Right.
So how have you, early on, your mom passed away.
Yep.
You're
on my own.
What, 18, 19?
19, yeah.
19. Did you ever play the victim for a moment? Or did you just pick up and go to work? Or how did that?
I mean, I'm sure I did. And there's times, not unlike other people, I recognize that I have some level of charisma in my personality. And so early on BC, before Christ, I could use that in situations to give an advantage to myself. I'm not talking about crazy stuff. I just mean like I could play that. Well, I'm sorry I'm late to work. I just play the sob story a little bit. And so, but pretty quickly I knew that I didn't want to be where I was, and that I was in control of doing something about it. Right, and so So I just kept looking and applying and hanging on the coattails of people that are better at stuff than I am. And I'm still doing that today. Most people on our board, most people part of our organization, even some of our key staff are all more intellectually gifted than I am. But I don't have any insecurities about that. I want to attract the brightest, most inventive, Jesus-loving people that we can.
Well, don't they say that if you're the smartest guy at the table, you're at the wrong table?
Probably. Or you're delusional.
There you go. Let's don't be delusional. Let's don't be the smartest guy at the table. Let's be around people. And Tim, you're gifted in ways that I'm not gifted. I'm gifted in ways you're not gifted.
Right.
And, the time, talent, treasures that God's given you, they're different.
Right.
And so how have you learned how to use those the way God's designed you?
Yeah. I constantly study myself, as well as the Bible and other things, But I think that everything from personality assessments to all those things help us. I'm a reader, so not necessarily physical books. I do a lot of audiobooks, and depending on the book, I'll flip to Kindle and physical. But I think that those things keep me growing, keeps me humble, trying to keep me learning. And the thing I've been trying to pitch to everybody, regardless of our faith, because if you're in some of our facilities, you're not going to see crosses on the walls. You're not going to see me run around speaking Christianese, you know, and trying to hit people over the head with the Bible, right? I think that if I'm living what I think the Bible tells me to, I should earn the opportunity for people to ask. And that doesn't mean I'm passive about my faith, but I'm not in your face about it. But I'll never apologize for it, And so, and I think that's attractive in our world. I think, I spent roughly half my time, half my life as a small business owner and then half my life as ministry leader and stuff. So what we're doing now is kind of this perfect blend of ministry and entrepreneurism and marketplace and so on. Yeah.
Let's take it back just a little bit. So in 2020, we or Valor Mentoring, I should say, Tim Davis, had the opportunity to purchase a bowling alley. Give us just a little snippet. We all know about the wreck, but maybe for a new listener, maybe they don't know about the wreck. So talk about where we've been, and then kind of where we're currently at, because we have some new changes as well.
Yeah, we had a studio downtown with an office in a basement of a church, and we had outgrown that. We knew we wanted to do something in the marketplace. We were thinking a coffee shop, something small, and I serve in 6 nonprofit boards here in Oregon, and so I was leaving a meeting with Dick Whitnell, and Dick's like, "Hey, Tim, Don and Ann really need to sell Town and Country Lanes." Don and Ann were 81 years old. They had owned it for 53 years. Don worked here for 7 years before that. Like his entire life has been in this building, And so couldn't let it out of my head. I come down a few weeks later and ask, "Is Don here?" And he comes to the counter and he's like, "Hey, don't you have something to do with Valor Mentoring?" I said, "Well, I'm one of the founders and the president." He's like, "Oh, I just got chills all over my body." He's like, "Do you want to buy the place?" And I'm like, "Yes, I do." And so, well, let's sit down and have coffee. And those conversations went on. And then to February 7th of 2020, we purchased the building. And 6 weeks later, we were shut down by COVID and that type of stuff.
Perfect timing.
Yeah. But our organization, like we knew God didn't get us the building to go bankrupt, so we just kept doubling down. We gutted the restaurant and rebuilt it. We put a new roof on. This place is nothing like it was, And so there's a live stage, there's a studio, there's conference rooms, there's all these different spaces that the community uses, And so now, on average, 500 people a day coming through the facility,
It's a lot of
for
people.
Different things. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. You're a Kaiser guy, but you never knew Don and Ann.
I did, but just from a distance, right? I'd been to a few school functions where we had been both sponsors or whatever, But so that's how he at least knew me a little bit. But so then that's continued to grow in its influence. A lot of really cool meetings happen in this facility that are regional, influence and so on. So it's cool to see what we've done. I think what we've learned is that having our own facilities gives us more freedom to do what we want to do. And then because we're a marketplace type business, I think that our donated dollar goes farther than most anybody else.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So, well, God gives us all plenty of opportunity, and the question is, are we taking the opportunity and doing something with it? Yeah. And one thing I know about you, Tim, is that you're a doer. And our flesh can get in the way sometimes. I mean, that's
sure.
But what I like about where you're at is you still have guys around you pulling back if we need to.
Yep.
Not, many guys.
Yes.
And so that you still allow guys to have influence in your life. It's not the Tim show. You still, God is still on the throne.
Yep. Yeah.
So I appreciate that. I mean, you're a go-getter. You have a lot of energy. You're an extrovert on, 10X. And I love that.
Yeah.
But that's what makes it all different. Okay, so then you've had opportunity in the last 12 months.
Yeah.
What'd you do with that?
Yeah. So then another conversation. We expanded into Woodburn and into Dallas with our mentoring programs. So as we start to expand across to Oregon, and I was meeting with a realtor over in Dallas, Tim English, and he had said, hey, I'll make some connections for you. over in Dallas. I actually went to Dallas High School, but it's been a long time, many decades ago. And and then so there's an opportunity there. There's an opportunity in Woodburn, but Alyssa, one of our staff members, actually my daughter, came back from a meeting and said, "Hey, do you know she was leaving a meeting and the Kaiser Grange is for sale?" And I'm like, "Oh, you know." And a few hours later, somebody from the community texted me a picture of the real estate listing and said, "Valor buys next legendary building and makes youth center." And I'm like, that's a pretty good idea.
It's a great idea.
Yeah. So between Alyssa and that and others, we went over there and walked through it the next day and said, if God was to get us this building, what would we do with it? And we built out some plans and worked out a deal. And over the last 8 months, we have renovated it into one of the coolest coffee shops and youth facilities there is. So yeah, we're excited. It's open now 6 days a week. And I couldn't be more pleased with what we've done with the facility. You know, it was built in 1938. It was moved to the location from River Road to Chemawa in 1958, and then renovated in 2024. So, yeah.
And that didn't come without a challenge. I mean, because was the purchase done like in August, September of last year?
Yeah, we structured a deal with the folks that own it, and that was they gave us a runway with a lease with no cost, you know, as we renovated it, and we just paid the taxes and the insurance during this transition time, and then finalized that this summer. And so it gave us a chance to do all the remodeling and stuff, which is like $450,000 worth of remodeling, including all new electrical, all new plumbing, all new lighting, all new insulation, and I mean virtually everything you could think of. You know, there's a $50,000 8-foot wide, 4-foot high, 2-sided full color reader board sign out front, right? And so that was donated by GD Tech, you know, Carlos Trillo and them, and then electrical discounts of almost $100,000 on the work that was done. Same with, you know, plumbing and, you know, Nate Bethel from Bethel Plumbing, and I could, you know, Electrical Concepts, and a whole bunch of really cool people, you know, sacrificed to help us make it happen, you know, so.
Well, when God's part of something, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one way you know, because the challenges were, it kept delaying and just, you know, I guess maybe this spiritual warfare, would you say? Would you say that's
you know, there's lots of things when you do a project like that. There's code and all that, and we're not corner cutters, and you know, in any stretch of that, we're going to do everything right, you know. And but that takes time. It took a lot more time than we maybe wanted, you know. But at the same time, the right pace. Even us moving forward on the project, right? You know, you talk about a leadership. Our board and you and others are 100% united. So on our board, there's guys who are more out there like me, Gabe Johansson, some others who are more risk takers and pushers, so to speak. And then you have other risk averse people within the board. And I think just like in my marriage or any friendship relationship, you have those opposites that help to make it more effective. And so although I have lots of opportunities and we're exploring quite a few of those, the pace at which that happens, I will never get ahead of. I would never bypass our board, you know, and try to do something, you know, on my own, because I mean, I think that God honors what we've done, you know, and is honoring what we're doing.
Yeah, iron sharpens iron.
Yeah,
you know, left alone, we know in Proverbs it talks about a man who seeks his own desire quarrels against all sound wisdom. Guys like to isolate, and we love to do things on our own. We want to be the hero.
Yeah.
But we can't be the hero. If we're going to do God's work, we can't be the hero.
No.
And as much as we want to do things at a different pace, and we often try to outpace God, I've learned something.
Yeah.
You can't.
I can be a little bit of a Peter sometimes.
Come on.
Know? Yeah. Yeah. Sheesh.
Yep. We want to be Paul, but we often act more like Peter. That's what I found.
Yeah. I mean, you know, while we're still on the subject of the rec Grange, right? So now we're sitting in the rec lanes. So we have the rec lanes, which is the bowling alley, and then we have the rec lanes, which is the coffee shop and youth center. And we have some more announcements over the next 12 to 18 months, you know, about other rec opportunities. So, you know, but that is, the rec Grange is situated 200 yards from the front door of McNary High School. So 200 to 500 kids a day walk by that building, and so, yeah, we're excited. We're just doing some summer camps, and there's every Friday afternoon there's a video game tournament and gaming stuff that happens with young people. But in the fall, every day of the week, we will have other things from hip hop dance to photography, music lessons, jam sessions, tutoring, mentoring, video games. We're starting a esports scholarship in the fall. We're going to sponsor a boys and a girls video game team, right? So, and we understand the risks in video games. I know that it can be addicting and that type of stuff. But at the end of the day, there's 8 billion people on the planet and 3 billion people play video games.
Okay.
And if you want to reach a young person, you don't wait for them to come to you. You go to them.
Yeah.
And so you go to them in their culture and their ways. And so, you know what? They really like coffee and energy drinks, and they like video games and music, And so those are things that we focus on. We're fortunate to have people on our staff with master's degrees in music education and media and Grammy-nominated artists, and 3 of our staff members that hold video game world records, 8 of them. So 8 world records are held by some of the people on our staff. So the kids that are hanging out about video games, about music, they're hanging with people who really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Have you ever watched the movie Jesus Revolution?
Yes. Yeah.
It reminds me of that because we can be a little staunch sometimes in our belief. We can be dogmatic.
Right.
This is how I did it 25 years ago. Therefore, you must do it my way. And the reality is, that whole movement is this hippie movement came in and they just want to love people.
Yeah.
And guess what? Love wins.
It
We have to
does.
change the way we do things. If we try to live out a religious way of doing things, it's never going to work.
Right. No, I totally agree. It's exciting to see how the community continues to engage with us. We are not listed as a religious nonprofit, but we are a faith-forward organization. If somebody asks me, what's your leadership model? Our leadership model is based on the historical figure of Jesus. Yeah. And no matter whether you're a government or whatever, separating church and state, people get, ask me those questions. I'm like, listen, do you have any problem with patience? How about kindness? How about self-control?
Huh?
How about
that?
Right? So I don't need to quote Bible scriptures, right, from the book. I can talk about the principles, right? Yeah. And against those things, there is no law. So as long as we responsibly walk out how we engage in the community, how we engage with youth, we're not trying to, we're not proselytizing out of the gate or any of that stuff,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Crazy stuff. Okay. When you look out 5 or 10 years, and by the way, how old are you right now?
Yeah, I'll be 59 in 3 weeks.
Okay.
Yep.
So 59 in 3 weeks.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you look out 5 or 10 years, I know you have a big vision where you'd like to take it. Give us a little glimpse into the vision of what Valor Mentoring looks like in the next 5 years.
Yeah. So we have doubled in size every year in our existence. So, which is pretty rare, as you know, in business or whatever. I mean, our clientele is doubling in size. It doesn't mean that our revenue probably too. But we did a little over 20,000 hours of mentoring in 23, and we'll do just short of 100,000 hours in 24. And
so it's a 4X.
Yeah. Yeah. The need is there. We're attracting the right people. If you can imagine, we've built everything we're talking about from scratch, like the name of the organizations, policies, procedures, and then hundreds of policies and procedures about how a bowling alley should run or a coffee shop, right? So it's a tremendous amount of work, but what we've put together is in the corporate world, we call it a proof of concept, right? What we're doing will work in many different environments. And so I expect to do 1 million hours of mentoring in a single year by 2030. And I expect to be in all 50 states in the next 14 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
How does somebody get involved in, because you have plenty of mentees that, I need mentor number one.
Right.
And I also need to be a mentor.
Yep.
How do people get involved in mentoring? Was there a qualification? What's that look like?
Yeah. So all of our mentors have a spiritual reference, professional references, of course, and background checks and that type of stuff. Yeah. And then we have a training and so on. But it just starts with hitting the button on our website. I want to be a mentor, or I want a mentor, right? And so that starts a process. We do some innovative stuff with some software. We're just 2 weeks away from, I think, having our app out, a mentoring app and stuff. So that'll really help to give even better tools. Our training tools will be on everybody's phones and that type of stuff. So again, we attract really, really, really bright people committed to doing what we're doing. But basically, you just hit one of those buttons, and then it asks you a questionnaire about what your likes and dislikes are. If you're applying to be a mentor, what work experiences do you have, and those type of things. What interests do you have as hobbies, and that all helps. Those are all filters that help us match someone with someone, right? And
that makes sense.
We also use a personality assessment, a specific DISC one from John Maxwell. That for every mentee and mentor, they'll go through a personality assessment, and of course, both of those cost money. Right, but it's important for us to match well and give every mentee or mentor a better understanding of who they are. That's the best thing you can do. Any of your listeners right now, the best thing you can do is know yourself better. Right.
Well, when you say that, I mean, I'm mid-50s. I'm right behind you.
Yep.
Right, and I think I was in my early 50s and realized I'd taken some personality profile tests, but not DISC specifically. And it wasn't until I actually took the DISC profile that I realized some of my personality. And it really helped me understand me. So I can only imagine by getting the mentor and the mentee to do it would be really awesome.
Yeah, and there's a code in there that, let's say you're mentoring me, you'd get your printout on you, you'd get your printout on me, but it'd also tell you how my personality receives information best from your personality.
Right.
So that's a whole 2-3 visits ahead of where we were or where most people are trying to accomplish this stuff.
So one of the funny things about, as I mentor guys, I always ask, hey, would you ever want to be a mentor? And if they're a Christian guy, oftentimes they say, but buddy, I'm not perfect. I'm like, nor am I.
Only one.
There's only one. And so how do you get guys off the fence of thinking they got to be perfect, or they're living in guilt or shame, or what is that?
Yeah. I mean, Satan's been using this tool forever, right? Yeah. You mess up, and then he's just going to use that to try to keep whacking you in the shin to keep you from accomplishing great things. I mean, I am far from perfect, right? And so, but we all have something to offer someone else, right? And so even, let's say you have challenges in your marriage, but you work hard. And this is an oversimplification.
Does marriage have problems out there? Is there problems in marriage? I mean.
Yeah.
Wow.
And thank Jesus, not in my home, man. I've got it really, really good. So, but my point to that is that you could model work ethic. You could model mathematic intelligence. You could, right? So there's none of us have all 12 cylinders, because 6 isn't enough, right? But you think of the 12-cylinder Jag or whatever. Like, not all 12 cylinders are running perfectly at all times.
No way.
In most people's lives, right? And so don't discount your ability to listen to someone, to advocate for someone, because everybody on the planet deserves to have an advocate in their life, right? And you'll never achieve success in the way I define it, or I think the Bible and any other legitimate ways of success without a mentor, without being.
Would you define your definition of success?
Yeah. I would say that this is what I say every day before I leave the house, that I want to live a long, healthy, and fruitful life. I want to live a legacy of my love for your son Jesus, my love for my wife, my love for my family, and I want to be known for serving the community. And you'll notice that monetary isn't in there. Now we need money, and it's a tool, and I'm not living in poverty. I'm just, but those aren't the things that drive me. Those are tools, right?
Sure.
But if I can't leave this planet with people that were reverent of my marriage and reverent of how I parented and how I led, then what do I have? Yeah.
Well, I think something me, you, and Sven we've done for the last 20 years is we meet monthly. Yeah. We're in Bible study together.
Yep.
We're accountable. We're being mentored. We're menteeing. We have mentees. We're in. We're all in. We're hey, how are you loving your wife?
Exactly.
Those are the questions, and I think that's what keeps us doesn't make us perfect, but it keeps us on the straight and narrow road.
Yeah. Listen, I know you pretty well, and I know that me and Sven and other people have license in your life to hold the mirror up and say, hey, bro. Right. And so I have at least a half dozen. If not, I give that permission to every person that we employ. Like, if you see something in me, that causes you question, right? I don't care whether I'm the person who signs the checks or not. Come, right?
Yeah.
Because I can be walking in a blind spot. I recognize that in my fervor, I can be more direct. I can be perceived more direct than the way I play it in my own head, right? And so that could be with my wife, that could be with an employee, that could be, And so if your listeners are listening, listen, you need two things in your life. You need purpose and you need accountability. That's it. I mean, Jesus is first, but I'm saying if you want to shrink it all down to two words that are non-religious, it is all of us need purpose and accountability, because without purpose, we have no resilience. Right. So if I'm a young person, and I'm saying I want to go to college, but I get turned down by college, or I don't have enough money, I'm going to find a second job. If the purpose is important enough, I'm going to climb over the hurdle. I'm going to keep climbing over the hurdle to get to that. Yeah. So purpose builds in the resilience that is non-existent in our culture. Most everyone is walking around without purpose or accountability. And our culture is teaching you to not have to have accountability. And it just doesn't work. It doesn't work in my marriage. It doesn't work in our business. It doesn't work in you and my friendship. Nope. So that's the thing that I've spent a fair amount of time trying to shrink it down so it's a bite-sized and common enough language that people can understand. So that's what I'm running around preaching to every governor, every superintendent, every teacher. These are the two things you need to give kids or businesses or fill in the blank.
People get lost in purpose. They don't know what their why is. And most people don't want to be held accountable, Tim. So what do you do with that?
Yeah. I have a couple of sayings. I don't push ropes. Okay. So in mentoring relationships or anything, if someone isn't ready, they're not ready. Now we could be a part of maybe helping them get ready if they're willing. But if you're not, I mean, God gave us free will, and our culture gives us free will. So you can just stay broke or stay divorced or stay out of relationship or, with your brother, sister, dad, mom, whatever. Stay an angry employee, right? Whatever that is. But I'm saying that's not God's best, So
I noticed for probably decades, I would show up at meetings, and I wanted to be the guy that divulged wisdom, me. And I realized there's no humility in that.
Right.
When I come with thinking that I'm the guy that knows all things, what I'm not doing is asking questions, and there's no humility in that. What I really want to learn is, what do I need to learn from this conversation? I don't care if you're 20 or 120. What can I learn? What can I learn? What can I learn? And that's the humility. And I may not do that perfectly, but I'm definitely aware. Keyword is aware that I have some shortfalls, but kind of like you, I like being the guy. I have a team, and one probably a few years ago, I wanted them to go around the room and really pick apart. We're going to kind of go around, the goods and the bads. I said, start with me. Where do I shine and where do I not shine? And the first person is like, I don't feel comfortable telling you where you don't shine. I'm like, we'll wait until you do. Because I need them to know that they can confront me on anything. I'm not above the law.
No. I'm not going to scream and cuss or fire you, right?
Nope. I need to be accountable, and I want to lead by example. And so there's blind spots in my life. There is. We all have blind spots. That's why we have friends.
Right.
And we get stuck. I think the key word is if I'm not accountable to you and Sven and my wife and God, I get stuck in my own ways and I don't even know where I'm stuck.
Yeah.
And then you come along and go, hey, buddy, why don't you go do this? Like, I didn't even see that. Yeah. And I should know better. But that's why we have accountability.
It's that seesaw thing, right? Because I think you're one of the wisest guys I know on the planet.
Yeah, I don't see that.
No, you are. And maybe it's that God allows us to continue to hopefully walk in humility, because that success thing won't continue without humility. Yeah. Right. And so, but you have to allow others to speak into your life. It's similar to, we want diversity in our relationships, right? If I'm taking advice just from people on our staff, people on my staff that are yes people, it's going to be a narrow road and we're not going to accomplish as much as what God really wants. But if you allow those people to flourish and come up with their own ideas within boundaries and let it happen, now you're on to something. Yeah.
You mean you want people to think for themselves, Tim?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Some of the crazy innovative stuff we're doing as a nonprofit organization, our coffee shop, it doesn't have an espresso machine in it.
Okay.
Yeah,
really?
It is a new technology using kegs, and so the stuff is already brewed and comes out on tap just like you do beer, right?
Yeah.
Our energy drink it's a special syrup that comes and gets ratioed right through our Pepsi machines, perfectly ratioed. So speed and consistency is there for every customer. So yeah. So there's lots of other ways where our young people and others in our organization are innovating, what we're doing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Some people look at your life, I know I do sometimes too, like, how does Tim do it all? Like, you're a busy guy. You're up early, late. You're responsible for a lot of people, your family. How does Tim do it? How do you manage it all? Because I'm curious.
No, yeah. And people say that to me a lot. They're like, man, you're the busiest guy I know. And I get that I'm a busy guy. And I credit that to people like Jack McLennan and Dick Whitnell and some of these other legendary people who are in their 80s. And it's easier for them than most of us to live in a sense of urgency because at least they perceive that they don't have as much time left on the planet as some of the rest of us, right? And so I made a decision about 4 or 5 years ago that I was going to live with that urgency every day. If I live like I'm 80 in my 50s, what I feel like God showed me is the difference over, should God give me another 20 or 30 years, the amount of just the difference that I could accomplish in this world, and not for myself, but for the kingdom, it's amazing. It's huge. And so I do lots of things super efficiently. I only buy 2 socks. They're both black. There's cropped and then there's no show. And they're all black, all the same brand. I don't sort socks. My wife doesn't sort socks, right? When I get in my car, I begin to back out and then when I go in forward, then I put my seatbelt on, right? So there's these little things that save me time, right? And there's lots of things around our house. I keep shrinking our yard because I don't want to mow. I don't want to pull weeds. I don't, right?
Yeah.
Because my time is not any more valuable than anybody else. I got the same 24 hours, right? Yeah. But I'm choosing to live it differently. And so the other thing I fortunately do is when I get home, I am present with my wife and my kids. Now they're grown and out of the house, but and a few years ago, you maybe heard me say this. I began to, when I get home, I go put on pajamas and a sweat top, and somehow that helps me disconnect. Now, occasionally there's a call from but the point is that it helps me mentally, physically to unplug better. Yeah. Better. Because I'm a fast thinker. I'm always thinking. And so it takes a little while for me to wind down and so on. So
it's interesting. I call those transitional phases because you can't go from a freeway on the Autobahn going 180 miles an hour and to get off on a little side ramp at going 30 miles an hour. Yeah. It just can't happen. You have to transition. What's funny, you and I are a lot alike because I have black socks. I have, black, my golf socks and my longer socks and I have about 3 pair of pants and 3 shirts, and that's it. It's simple. It's very efficient. But I think really when you understand your purpose and your why, it trumps the when and the how. Like you're clear. Like you're very clear on what it is you're going to do today, and you live on purpose every day.
Yeah. I wish I was this clear at 30.
Right.
Right. But part of what we're doing is helping people get clearer earlier. Right. So, yeah. So that maybe you don't be such a late bloomer as I am, Well,
I think to your credit and my credit, you and I get mentored by a guy named Jack McLennan, who's 80-some years old.
82, yeah.
82, and you and I show up. We're hungry to learn.
Yes.
I don't want to wait 30 years to learn what Jack knows. I want to learn it at 55.
Well, yeah, and Jack's been learning from Jack Dory, right? So Jack has mentors in his life, and Jack is, you and I know, and maybe those listeners, if you know Jack, like he's lived 5 lives, man. Yeah. He has spoken in most coliseums. Yeah. He's been to private islands. He's been baptized in the Jordan River. Been to the White House multiple times, met presidents. How cool is that? And there's another humble guy. You don't hear that from him unless you're hanging for long periods of time right? Served our country, did some crazy stuff, strong-willed stuff for our country. So he's definitely patriotic, and so am I. 7 of my family members have served. My brother did, and so you and I are sitting in this studio because of our U.S. military and our history and our founding fathers, right?
Well, yesterday was July 4th. We celebrated our independence and our freedom.
Yeah.
And freedom isn't free, Tim.
Right.
It actually costs somebody something.
And it's not a cute saying or a bumper sticker.
Right.
It's truth.
Freedom is, Jocko Willink, it's not necessarily a Bible verse, but discipline equals freedom. But even in the Bible verse today, the verse of the day in 2 Timothy 1:7 is the very last word is discipline. Get some discipline. I think that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
And so I might look at myself and go, I'm not that disciplined. I hear around you or Jack or Sven, and you guys seem very disciplined. Now, you probably all think that, I could be more disciplined because you know all the good and the bad.
Right.
But I want to get some of that. I want to get some more discipline.
Yeah, I agree. Discipline brings freedom, right? I mean, I walk in freedom in my marriage relationship, freedom from pornography, freedom from those things. And I live almost a guilt-free life, I screw up, but yeah. I mean, I our good friend Sven, that guy's been reading the entire Bible every year since 1984. I'm not that disciplined. Right? So people think I'm disciplined, and I get that I have other disciplines, and I read my Bible and all that, but then if we start doing that comparison thing,
don't compare.
It's a dangerous thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, interesting, man. We could talk about this for a very long time. I had a question for you, and I can't think of it. But Tim, as you move forward, what are those challenges that you face, or what are you currently facing right now? That maybe a challenge that most people think, oh, Tim's got it pretty easy. Things are pretty good. What's your greatest challenge? I've heard that somewhere, by the way.
Yeah.
A guy named Tim Davis, he says this a lot, but now I'm going to pull it out of him.
Yeah. Just going at the right pace and acquiring wisdom. I feel like I've acquired a lot more wisdom than I thought I would, but my hunger for it is even more, right? And so we've got tremendous opportunities. There's 3 or 4 huge opportunities for our organization moving forward. Probably all of them will come to pass, but what order should they come in, right? And then, of course, the amount of resources it takes. But my father owns cattle on 1,000 hills, and I don't know where the money would come from, but I didn't know where the money would come from the Grange, right? And we're doing this debt-free. So, and I think there's many more buildings and for us to acquire and to use for his purposes, Well,
I think your heart's right. I mean, that's why I see God wants to bless us. For his glory, for his purpose. Yeah. He wants people to come to know Christ.
Yeah.
And we own, Valor owns a bunch of real estate, but we can't take it with us, and it's God's anyway. He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. Sure. I love that verse, by the way.
Yeah.
It's when I'm driving by hills, I just think of that verse. It's his. We don't take any of it with us.
Well, and I think it might be easy for some of your listeners to think, oh, Buddy's got it all together, Tim's got it all together. Look how much great stuff they're doing and and whatever. But it just starts with one decision. Right? I mean, if you're listening to us and you're not being mentored or you're not mentoring someone else, I would really beg you to consider it because one, it's super rewarding. I learn from all the different people that I'm mentoring, right? From mentees, right? And so it's certainly rewarding. But I'll tell you right now, the line is endless of mentees, a waiting list for us. So we can take as many godly mentors as we can find. Yeah.
What's interesting about being mentored is oftentimes I already know the truth. I'm just not walking in it.
Yep.
So I'm being reminded by someone to walk in truth. So I think like you're saying, I would say if you're not being mentored, pray about it.
Yeah.
Pray about it.
Yep.
You don't have to listen to me and Tim. We don't know anything. We're just a couple guys, a couple knuckleheads.
What does God think?
Yep. Yeah, what does God think? What does God want you to do in your life? And that would be my challenge for you is just pray about it. Don't listen to me. But I'd love the conviction of the Holy Spirit to challenge you. I mean, that's our conviction.
Yeah.
Tim, you've never told me to do it. I've never heard you say, hey, you need to do this. No, we just pray about it, and I'm convicted, and therefore then I do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but none of the people that I know that are retired have an appreciation for their handicap over what they did or done or doing. Right. So, I mean, all of us have a little bit of time, Now, whether it's our organization or some other great cause, like getting involved, God put that in us to give back, whether that's financially or with our wisdom or our physical strength, right? But it makes it rewarding for us. And so in our organization, at the pace we're growing, we need people, we need administrative volunteer. We have a lot to do. We're onboarding and background checking and expanding our programs into different cities. So there's lots of opportunities for men or women, young or old, to jump on board. And a lot of the staff members started as volunteers, right?
Yeah,
and then so.
Crazy stuff. Well, hey, this has been good, Tim, just to catch up and we'll be praying for you as you lead Valor Mentoring. I mean, I think you're the guy we look at to lead our ship. Is there certain areas that maybe you want more prayer than in another area?
I mean, it sounds cliche, but I think it still just comes back to wisdom.
Wisdom.
I think that we have built up a reputation in the community and then regionally and maybe even nationally. And so at what pace and how and when do we go about that?
Yeah.
So,
well, cool. So if somebody wants to reach out to you, Tim, what's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah. If you go to our website, valormentoring.com, you just put Tim in front of that. So tim@valormentoring.com. You can reach me that way. Our offices are still local and so on. And so I'm a fairly accessible guy. It usually would take at least a day or two to get on the calendar or something, But I'm always interested in having conversation and learning from other people.
Yeah. So if you're somebody out there that really wants to get involved and you don't know how, stop by the rec. Come down here, bowl, bring some family and friends down. You can bowl. You can go to the Grange, have a coffee. You can connect with the staff or Tim or myself and get involved. But definitely pray about getting involved in what God would have you do, because you have time, talent, and treasure. We all have those. Yeah. And how are you using those? That's the question. So be mentored, and also have some mentees, because you need those as well. And just keep growing. And realize that you have not reached what God would have you reach yet. You're not going to until He calls you home. So keep going, keep doing it. Keep mentoring, and Tim will keep praying for you and keep leading our group here as well. So thanks for being on today.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Love the show.
Have a great Friday. Talk to you soon. Thanks, you guys.